Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of the Black Rose Gaming D&D discussion. I'm the host and the GM, Mikado. You can call me Mick. And let's go ahead and do a quick roll call. Animus
Here.
and Balasar.
Here.
Okay, and let's get started at the start. Gentlemen, if you would please once again introduce yourself and tell me briefly about how it is you got into D&D. Who wants to start? If
You
nobody,
can go, Bal.
Alright. I started it in high school. A friend got me interested and I was hooked after that.
Animus.
I started playing D&D back when I was about 12. My dad introduced me with the 3.5 starter set.
Alright, cool. My story actually goes way back in the day to the late 80s and early 90s. The very first D&D thing I ever had was a set of dice that I got from a Walmart in the toys section. Had no idea what the hell it was just playing around with it, trying to figure out how you even knew what some of the dice read or did. And then when I was in the 8th grade, I was introduced to, I believe, 3rd edition. Like straight up 3rd edition, not even 3.5. Never actually got anywhere with it. Then, after high school, I started game testing. There were some guys that were doing a Star Wars thing, and I heard Star Wars, and so, of course, being a nerd like the rest of us, I got interested, convinced them to let me join, and it has been a roller coaster ever since then. So, with that out of the way, a brief description for those of you that may or may not know what D&D is, or may just be kind of wondering what the hell we're even talking about. Dungeons & Dragons, Star Wars, Edge of the Empire, Pathfinder, all kinds of different shit. It's a pencil and paper RPG. There are rule books that you use, give you a breakdown of how combat works, how creating a character works. You have a list of abilities, usually, that tell you what a character can and cannot do. You get a health point pool, which, taking damage in fights, takes away from that, and eventually, of course, if you get to 0, you die. And from there, you also use it to tell stories. You know, you go off on adventures, fight monsters, get loot, have all kind of fun stuff happen. So, now that we've gotten through that, the reason that D&D is used as a blanket term is because Dungeons & Dragons, the original one, is so well known. It is so just, what's the word, just ubiquitous with pencil and paper RPGs that it has itself become just the term people use for pencil and paper RPGs. Some people use D20 because there is a 20-sided dice, but there's a lot of systems that don't use a 20-sided dice. One of my personal favorites being Firefly, which doesn't even use the 20-sided dice at all, as you both well know, from playing with me and becoming galactic terrorists against my own best interests.
Thank you.
What can I say? My character did not like the Alliance.
I hate you
at
both
all.
so much. So, moving on. What is the first system you guys played? Animus, how about you?
The first system I played, like I said in my introduction, was the Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition starter set. Was the very first thing I played as far as Dungeons & Dragons, or any tabletop RPG for that matter, goes.
All right.
Pretty much same here.
You started with 3.5?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I started with the Star Wars Saga Edition Dungeons & Dragons game, which I enjoyed so very much, and at some point in the future, we're all going to get together and play that as our campaign once we get through some of the other stuff that we're doing, like Night's Watch. Which, for those who don't know, there is not only several Game of Thrones systems, or Song of Ice and Fire, as they sometimes go by, but there's one specific system that has an entire rule book just devoted to the Night's Watch. I love it so very much. These two gentlemen can both attest to the fact that I enjoy it, and I enjoy making their lives miserable within it.
I don't know what miserable. What are you talking about?
I guess it was
My
really.
life,
I
my
guess.
life has not been miserable with that system.
I guess it was really. What was that character's name? I don't even remember the character's name.
Neither do I, but he got one shot by an ice spider white.
I mean, it's still a lot more fun to say it the way I was saying it. That you guys killed a giant ice spider, and then it killed him.
Yeah.
So much fun. So, what exactly is your? How many other systems have you guys played? No, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot, Belisar. What was the first system you ever played?
It was the
3.5, right?
3.5.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I said, it was the Saga edition of Star Wars. What is your favorite system out of all of them? If you can narrow it down, which can be difficult, I know.
Oh, yes, incredibly. Well, I'd say the top 5, I'd have to say Pathfinder, then Firefly, then Edge of the Empire, Star Wars. Oh, God. I almost had my chance of playing a Star Trek tabletop game.
I do have a character sheet for that. I don't have a rule book, I don't think. I'm gonna go ahead and look in my file folder real quick while we're talking. But I don't think I have a rule book for it, but I know for a fact I have a character sheet because it does exist. Oh, that's right. I have something, but it's like it's a next generation thing, I think, and I don't really know anything about next generation. But if you
Was
do,
Star Trek
Chris,
in it?
but
Star
if
Trek Next Generation?
yes,
Oh,
but if you
yeah.
do, if you know anything about next generation Belisar and you'd like to, GM a game, if you have ideas, the tools are there.
Well, what I was going for was that unlike that Star Trek Timelines gaming app, you had your choice of starship you could choose from, what class, whatever, and then you could choose your race, what position you're going to be.
Yeah.
Captain, second in command, science officer.
I mean,
An engineer.
That's
Chief
what I
engineer.
was. I was in a Star Trek campaign briefly, and I was an engineer, and I was working toward being like an actual ship designer. I was excited about it.
What race did you choose?
I was boring and chose human.
Oh, see, mine was Cardassian.
To be fair, I was a Russian.
On a Federation starship.
That sounds like it's not common at all to me.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Cardassian raised by Bajorans. That kind of thing.
I don't know what Bajorans are either. Because like I said, I really don't know anything about like Next Generation.
Well, whoever's listening is probably has some idea.
I mean, I would imagine there's, if we have any kind of like actual audience, here's hoping that probably a lot of them will be huge Trekkies. A lot of them will be huge Star Wars fans, and we all know how big the Firefly fan base is. Go Firefly!
Oh yeah.
River is my waifu.
Awesome,
go Browncoats or go home.
Go Browncoats or go home.
Belisar, you said you played a Kardashian?
Yeah, Kim Kardashian.
Yes, indeed.
No.
So which one did you? So which one did you like better, Kanye or Jay-Z? Oh man. What about you?
Sorry, I had to go there.
Well, it is tough keeping up with the Kardashians.
Yeah.
But what about you, Animus? What's your favorite system?
I don't know. I'd have to say it's a toss-up between Firefly because Galactic Terrorist.
Yeah.
And 3.5 or Pathfinder.
I could see that.
Which, I mean, I say 3.5 or Pathfinder, and they're almost exactly the same rule set in reality.
I mean, they're
But the
very
lore
similar.
and the worlds
Yeah, the
can be
lore.
drastically different.
I mean, you need look no further than Cthulhu and the Greys and some of the other stuff going on in Pathfinder. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, well, personally, I think my favorite system is. Oh man, that really is hard to pin down. Although I gotta say, really, I think my favorite system comes down to Game of Thrones. Now, whether or not it's the Green Ronin system that we're doing now or the traditional, I can't really say because they're both a lot of fun. But I never got to be a player in the Green Ronin system that we're using for Night's Watch. I did get to be a player in the original version of Game of Thrones, which not the Tristat, which we did, which is for those who don't
Kind of
know.
wonky.
For those who don't know, there is a Song of Ice and Fire like official role playing game that was released long years ago, and in the back of the rule book, it has an alternate system that instead of using the traditional 6 ability scores, uses 3, and it's called Tristat because 3 ability scores, and then figure out the rest from there. And it turns out that one is incredibly easy to break, and it was just not a good time. Not a good
Yeah,
time at all.
and the experience of the group we've been playing with for, I don't know, what, a year at this point?
Something like that, yeah, about a year.
For this variation of the group, anyway?
Yeah, it's been about 2 years with Yumi and Balasar.
Yeah. Is that the various tri-stat systems do not work well. They're either poorly designed, or we have folks that are just too good at manipulating rules we barely understand to end up with characters stupidly more powerful than they're supposed to be, and still be well within the bounds of proper interpretations of the rules.
Well,
or acceptable interpretations of the rules.
well, you may not know this, but the Legends campaign that I keep talking about because there was so much just craziness and hilarity, like the butthole monster, which, for those of you in the audience wondering if you'll ever actually want to know, I will explain that another day, but for now, just there it is. That particular system, whatever system it was that he was using, I don't remember what it was called anymore. It was also a Tristat system, which I don't know. It was fun at the time, but it was kind of just a very it was a very basic system that he was using so that it could be easily molded to allow for a party that's a Warhammer 40k Space Marine and Vegeta out of Dragon Ball Z and literally Queen Elizabeth II of England and and Hector Barbosa from Pirates of the Caribbean and Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. That was our party, if you can believe that. And then later on, we ended up having Slade and Deadpool working together. It was quite a group. But Tristat really doesn't work very well. It seems to be very poorly designed, and it's extremely easy to abuse.
Yeah.
Which is why I really don't like it.
Like with the Tri-Stat Game of Thrones system, we had a water dancer that we could not balance
Oh my god.
anything.
The only thing that could have stood up against the water dancer was a dragon or a White Walker, and that's only because you can't get rid of them without magic. Like, really, come on. Come on. No, it's not okay. It's not fair.
And even then, given the right weapon, he might would have won.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Once again, then, moving on to our next topic. What is your favorite character that you've made out of any system? If there is just one in particular character that is your absolute favorite of them.
Oh, that is tough.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, I don't even have just one personally, but either of you have even an idea?
The two that take the cake to me are my psychic engineer, alliance hating galactic terrorist.
Of course it is. And the
And
mace.
my 5th edition homebrew half-finished class Jedi that literally used the Force to throw ballista bolts through everything.
Hey, and a Dragonborn Paladin. Do not forget
Yes.
me, sir.
And a Dragonborn Paladin. I was about to mention that because I was going to say, and also a Dragonborn Paladin through a dragon, resulting in said dragon being turned inside out.
Yep. Yep.
I kind of like. What was that one? The Twi'lek ace pilot I have for Star Wars: Edge of the Empire.
I think you mean Twi'lek, a stripper, with how often you had her taking her clothes off.
For stupid reasons.
Only that one time.
I mean, I told you the guards don't care that your character's taking her clothes off, and you were just like, "No, it's totally cool. I'm totally gonna do this." Like, all right, but I mean, it's not gonna help anything.
I did quite want to model her after Harley Quinn from the DC comic series.
I mean, I do like Harley Quinn.
Also, isn't my droid for that system just kind of terrifying? What with the whole memory core backed up to the starship and whatnot?
Oh, to my ship, yes.
What are you talking about, your ship? That ship is mine.
It is now, anyway. I mean, he literally has control of it, as far as the brain of the ship. And I mean, if we're going to talk about terrifying characters in Edge of the Empire, you really can't forget D3X-TR.
No, you can't.
No, you cannot.
The poor, innocent little, scrapped together protocol droid who's been turned into a surgical droid that it turns out is actually a serial killer.
Hey, we upgraded him so that he's actually got a full surgical droid body, so...
A full surgical droid body made out of laminate armor, if you remember, sir.
Yes.
You sprung for the laminate.
Yes.
To make him even worse. Ay, ay, ay. My favorite character... well, what about you, Balasar? Favorite character? Any system. Does not matter.
5th edition, my barely tested chromatic blue Dragonborn fighter.
The one that snapped the goblin's neck?
Yes.
So here's a fun story, kids. Little boys and girls out there. We were doing the kind of learn how the system works preview adventure that came with the 5th edition starter box, the starter adventure, if you will, and he was going up against a single goblin in, single combat, and he decides that he's going to do a special attack by dropping his sword and then dropping his pants and slapping the goblin with his massive dragon dick. And he rolled a natural 20, and I believe I made you roll another d20 after that to see how significant the critical hit was.
What it was is you gave me a difficulty of 12 or something.
Yes.
And I hit the mark.
Yes.
I mean, really now? You hit the mark?
He hit the mark. Yeah, he hit the mark in the skull, and it snapped its neck.
Dice for it.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, and so I began calling it the cockslap that echoed into history because, well, quite frankly, it did. Personally, I think my favorite character of all time that I have made was in Star Wars. The first system I ever played, Star Wars, because that system, I made a character when we decided to start doing the Sith campaign. There was an Ikachi. Now, the Ikachi are, in Star Wars, a species of red-skinned humanoids with these horns that come out from the side of their heads and go down to about their shoulders that are known for being able to see into the future and are generally kind of people are always paranoid about them and nervous about them because, well, they can see into the future, and that's scary. That scares people. His parents looked into his future when he was born, and they looked just far enough to see him joining the Jedi. And we're like, oh, awesome, cool. Hand him over now. They handed me over to the Jedi. I began training, and one day while I was training, this like galactic hero that was the main character of another campaign, and at the end of that campaign ended up falling to the dark side, shows up at the Jedi temple and is asking for people to help him go save the galaxy again. So naturally, I'm one of the first people to just run up there and be like, oh yes, come on, let me do this. I join with him. I end up being forced to do shadier and shadier crap. I fall to the dark side. I even assassinate another Sith Lord, which was really fun because it was another player, and I got to be his apprentice as well, but like secretly I wasn't really his apprentice, I was the other guy. Assassinated him, fell completely to the dark side, eventually was redeemed, but my redemption came from losing my own body. I had to spend 20 years as a human because I did what's called transfer essence, which literally separates my soul, and I possessed another person, and then the Force eventually gave me back a new body. It was very emotional that night. That's my favorite character though. And do you guys have a favorite race at all in any one system or in every system?
Not necessarily, but I did want to do more things with that catfolk ranger character I had.
Well, he kind of, got obliterated. He kind
Yeah.
of got he just a little bit got scorched. Just a little bit got scorched.
I mean, all that was left was a pile of ash.
Yeah.
And burnt cat hair smell. I just rolled.
To be
crap.
fair, that campaign was honestly not fair to you guys, to the players.
I had fun with it.
I did happen to make that Drow gunslinger character right afterwards.
That's true. You got to make a gunslinger after that. But I mean, again, though, to be fair, that campaign was not fair to you guys. I mean, y'all were literally fighting against a cult of superpowered leopards that were working for, eldritch horror terrors from beyond the veils of time and space.
And if the werewolf hadn't been one shot, we would have eventually won that fight as I slowly turned everything into zombies.
But as I told you, if you had
And
won that fight,
necromancy is illegal.
but as I told you, if y'all had won that battle, you would have ended up becoming eldritch horror terrors from beyond the veils of time and space and devouring the universe yourselves, including the former eldritch horror terrors from beyond the veils of time and space. So even if you win, you lose. That campaign was not okay. Admittedly, you and your shenanigans.
You enjoy my shenanigans.
I hate you so much. I hate you so much.
But you still enjoy my shenanigans.
Yeah. But so that's Balasar's favorite race, approximately. Do you have any other favorites? Any others you really enjoy playing?
Twi'leks. To what was that other one I played?
Togruta?
Yeah, Togruta.
Those are cool, even though they're usually pacifist.
Yeah. I did like my what was it, a high elf ranger?
I think it was a high elf, yeah.
Thundil Oakbrook.
I really don't remember the name.
Well, yeah, that's who. That's was his name.
Ah.
It's the one that eventually we had to kind of hopscotch our way through Horde of the Dragon Queen onto Rise of Tiamat.
Yeah, because the adventure path makes no damn sense whatsoever. Basically, none of them do, apparently. I guess I just had a really good DM when I was doing 4th edition and what was it, Wrath of the Giants, I think is what it's called. But for those of you that don't know, Dungeons and Dragons, Adventure Paths, and other systems adventure paths like Pathfinder and all that, the adventure books, they they're very frustrating in the way that they're written. I don't know if it's that I'm just reading it wrong, or that, me and the other people in my group don't know what we're doing. Maybe that's it. But they seem very badly designed as
Plus,
far
the
as trying
story
to
kind
get
of
through
drops
it.
off.
The story is supposed to drop off because the stories are meant to be like little episodic adventures inside of a big adventure, so that you can kind of go off and do your own thing with it and kind of make it your own. But I mean, it's like with Pathfinder, with that big continent ship that it had us going in that fell from space, and it expects us to go through the front door and then completely ignore the gigantic pair of doors in front of us for the bloodstained door to the left of us, even though the next area, the area that we're in, is Area 1, and the area immediately in front of us, no, the area immediately in front of us was like room number 7 or something, but even then, it had you go to the left into a big long hallway. Then it wanted you to apparently come back to that first room, go to the right through a door that leads to really nothing, come back out again, go through the hallway into another room, then go through some hallways that you're not supposed to technically be in yet because you're going from room 3 to room 4, but you have to go through hallway number 7 to get there. Like, there's no logic to this, it seems.
Right.
But how about a favorite class? Anybody? Or I'm sorry, Animus, I didn't ask you what your favorite race is to play.
That's a hard choice for me because I usually base my race off of the class I play and what race I think fits the class best.
That is a good way to make a character. That really is a good way to design your character, is to figure out what class you want to play.
And I mean, sometimes I'll pick a race I've never done before and then look at the classes for the system until I figure out what works. But most of the time, the first thing that I pick is my class.
I can see that. All right. How about a favorite class then? Balasar? Well, I guess I forgot to do myself on the favorite race. I don't really have a favorite race overall. I like a lot of different races in different things. Like, I like playing. Humans are easy in basically anything. But like
Very.
in Star Wars, I like the Akachi. I like the Akachi a lot. I really do. I also like I like the ability to make custom races. That I have a lot of fun with that. That's
Yeah.
just so cool to me.
Animus had the fun with that one character he created.
Which one was that, Animus?
I don't know which one Chris is talking about at the moment. Was it the Dragonborn in the mix custom Star Wars system he's working on?
No, you had when we were. It was that custom Star Wars thing where we were back at the academy.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. That was basically the Dragonborn.
That was a custom Dragonborn. Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because we were trying to figure out how to make a Dragonborn with my system. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the story dropped off.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, I was trying to design that for a party of at least 4, and I had a party of 2, and it went way too fast that way. It didn't work out right. It really didn't work out right.
Although the group we've got now might be big enough for actually truly playtesting that.
Yes, it might. I'm gonna bring that up to them next time we get together. Let's see. Favorite race? Well, like I said, I like the Akachi. As far as traditional Dungeons and Dragons, I mean, I gotta be boring and go with the Dragonborn. I love dragons, man. And that's as close as you get to playing a dragon. And my favorite god in Dungeons and Dragons is obviously Bahamut. So that's cool. I'm still mad at wizards, by the way. because 4th edition Wrath of the Giants has this whole thing about this like lost village of Arcosians, which, for those that don't know, the race Dragonborn is not actually the name. That's the name that they were given by other races. Their actual name is Arcosian, because they came from the nation of Arcosia. And they mention in Wrath of the Giants that Arcosia was lost to some great doom, and that the entire nation is covered in ruins, and that there's these demons and monsters running around everywhere, and it sounds so cool. And it even talks about Tiamat and her people and her minions having control of the entire nation, and there's this huge potential for a different adventure going on, and they did nothing with it. Just nothing. And that made me really sad.
The lore there, as I understand it, is that it was some conflict with the Tieflings and their demonic devil ancestry.
Yes. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but for me, it really comes down to a lot of systems. It comes down to custom races. Because I have so much fun with it. I mean, with Pathfinder, with the world I made, I created at least 2 different species of my own. Technically 3, if you want to count the strange ones. But I mean, there is no Naga race in Pathfinder. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. There's some kind of monster that has a Naga form, but it's not actually a Naga. It's like a spirit or something that just it can take that form, or it can take several others. And the so-called Nagas that they have are snakes with a human face, whereas my Naga race is more anthropomorphic, for lack of a better word. And then there's also the faceless in my game, which, for the audience who has no idea what the hell I'm talking about, in my Pathfinder world, the faceless are a race of beings that literally have no facial features whatsoever. They have a smooth surface. And when a creature that is not another faceless looks at them, what they see is the thing that is their greatest fear. And so, because of the race being pacifist like they are, what is that noise?
Me.
Was that you, Belisar? Okay, well, the
Sorry.
race of faceless, it's okay. Being pacifist, they figured out a way to enchant masks, and so they put on a mask that looks like it's the face of somebody from a different race. So, like, a mask looks like a human face or a half-orc face or whatever, and they become that race in a way, which, as far as gameplay goes, means that as a faceless, you have no racial modifiers whatsoever. But when you put on a human mask, you gain the racial modifiers of a human. You gain the +2 to 2 abilities or whatever it is and the extra feet. But if you take the mask off, you lose the +2 and you lose the extra feet. So I have a lot of fun doing that. And I like to ramble about it, obviously. So, tips and tricks. Tips and tricks for character creation. Personally, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong, especially if you're a new player, with just doing your stats by going down the line. Because the way you do stats in the traditional Dungeons and Dragons kind of systems is you roll 4 6-sided dice, take away the lowest number, add the other 3 together, and that's your stat. There's a lot of arguments about how it's only right if you do it a certain way, where you put the numbers in a certain spot, but there is seriously nothing wrong with just going down the line and then deciding on a class and changing it later. There really is nothing wrong with that. Now, whatever group you're in, the person in charge might have a problem with it, but frankly, if you're new to the game, it's a lot to take in. And how about you, Animus, Belisar? You got anything to add?
As far as rolling stats goes, I admit I prefer to use a point buy system, but that's because that's to me is easier to make better characters with.
I could see that because it takes away the uncertainty of the dice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with a point-buy system, it is easier to balance your party against each other.
That's
as
true.
far as stats go.
That's true. And as I've said so many times before, min-maxing is not a good idea, which, those of you that don't know, min-maxing, especially in a point-buy system, means that you have certain stats that are as low as possible so that you can have other stats that are as high as possible. Which sounds fine in theory, but you really need to try and have as well-rounded a character as possible, I find, because you never know when you might end up having to be the one that does something that your character is just not even prepared to do otherwise, and if it ends up having to be you that shoots the crossbow, and you have no dexterity whatsoever to use that crossbow with, then the party could end up being in a lot of trouble. Or if you end up being the one that has to heal somebody because everyone else is unconscious and you have no ability whatsoever to do that, then just it can be bad. It can be bad.
Yeah.
So how about, let's see, stat rolling, we've covered that. Skill focus. Are you guys in favor of focusing heavily on skill points and where they go and keeping track of that? Not so much. I mean, you know the way that I play the game, I generally don't focus on skills all that much. But some people do, and some people prefer to, some people prefer not to. How about y'all?
Depends on the character class and the race and all that. I mean, yeah, it'd be a good idea to be bumping up stats and stuff, and but generally, you if you want to be able to do a lot of melee or ranged attacks, it just depends.
Yeah, I find that the actual skill list isn't all that useful in most systems for attacking people. Admittedly, it can be in some, but that depends almost entirely on the skill set and the system you're running. Like, for instance, in Pathfinder, your skills aren't going to come up very often as far as being able to attack somebody, to deal damage to someone. Intimidating them, sure. Persuading them, even, definitely. But attacking them, not so much. Except for, like, spellcraft, maybe. Then again, in Star Wars, there is literally a use the Force skill that you roll a dice for anytime you're going to use a force power, whether it's a force power that affects the lightsaber in your hand that you're attacking somebody with, or affects whether or not you're even able to throw some lightning at them or whatever. You roll a use the force check, and so in that case, the skills become very important. And so do your abilities, also, obviously, because the abilities are where the skills come from, in addition to the skill points that you add into them.
Yeah.
As far as skills go, to me, I'm a little of both ways. In a combat-heavy system, they don't matter as much, in my opinion. But if you're doing a more story-heavy system or a more story-heavy adventure in a system that's built to go either way, such as Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, having these skills can be an incredibly useful thing for the story.
It certainly can be, because especially the more roleplay heavy campaigns, which is honestly something I like to do a lot, which I run into problems with certain people. Some people prefer very combat heavy games, and I really don't, honestly. I mean, I enjoy it as much as anybody else. Honestly, I enjoy combat. It feels good to be, to be the Dragonborn with a big two-handed greatsword and chopping some dude in half and all that. But I honestly enjoyed a lot more playing as a guy who was training to be a water dancer in Game of Thrones and was running things back and forth for different noble houses and doing all kinds of scheming and thievery and stealing stuff and getting back backroom information on people and making deals and all that stuff. I enjoyed that a lot more.
I mean, what with me lighting the candle that wasn't supposed to be able to be lit?
Yes, indeed, the obsidian candle. Damn it. Damn it, Animus. Damn it! And of
And then
course,
we've just converted that particular character so that I can use it for the Night's Watch campaign.
let's not forget the other very brave and incredibly stupid thing that character did. Going to the old battlefield, the boneyard, and letting the stranger touch your brain.
You enjoy my shenanigans and you know it.
I hate you so much.
Besides, that has benefits. No clue what they are yet, but they're there.
It also has drawbacks, and I would think you know that by now.
True. But benefits and shenanigans. And things are going to... And things north of the wall are going to get quite interesting when I get around to playing that character.
Yes, they really are.
I did like the whole thing after my cat folk ranger turned to a burning, smoldering pile of burnt cat hair. Was when our group's, well, she was a druid that worshipped darkwood trees or something, and she ended up coming across the concept of death.
Oh,
And
I
then
do love him. I do love playing as him. That's a lot of fun to do. For those of you that don't know in the audience, which probably is all of you, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
In my custom Pathfinder world, there is a god of death, but there is also the literal personification of the concept of death. And the concept of death is just such a fun character to play as because he pokes holes in everything and he asks people questions that they have a very difficult time answering, and also in a high fantasy medieval setting, he is a man with slicked back hair, a cigarette, and an Armani suit. It's a lot of fun. I actually had one player in a different campaign had his character questioning whether or not anything was real, including himself talking to the personification of death, and it was so fun. But yes, you and the personification of death, Balasar, that was good fun too. And
no,
watching
no,
him,
it was it was the druid who was meditating under the darkwood tree, ended up talking to the concept of death in order to save the werewolf, and
and the werewolf, and the werewolf.
God ended up showing up.
Yes, and then the werewolf's god and the personification of death had an argument, and that poor druid was just sitting there terrified, like, oh no, what have I done? If they
Was
get
it
mad, what's going to happen to me?
the personification of death ended up really insulting the werewolf god, and then
Very
you
much
hear
so.
my newly dead character in the background just screaming, "Burn!"
Just like Michael Kelso from that 70s show, yes. Screaming out, burn! Ay, ay, ay.
I think I actually had to roll for that one to do that. You were saying, Animus?
That's about the time that the rogue that I was playing said, yeah, screw this. I'm better off stealing from the Nazi SS equivalent Paladin Order.
Yes, the Imperial Paladin Order. Good stuff. I love that world so much. I could talk for hours about that world. All the different things going on in it, and the nations and everything. I'm not going to bore anybody with it, though.
Then the druid and the Magus ended up leaving to go do a quest or something else, and then.
Well, that was kind of an excuse for the party because the two players ended up not being able to spend the time with us to do D&D, which was extremely unfortunate. I love those guys, both of them, very much. Which one of them might in a little while, if we're still doing this, have time to join us tonight. He said that he ended up getting kind of sidetracked with other stuff going on, but that was because he is he's either active duty technically or he's in the National Guard. I forget, but it basically came
Right.
down to like he didn't get a weekend off because if he wasn't at work, then he was at the base, and if he wasn't at the base, he was with us playing D&D, and it was taking all of his time, and he had no time to relax and unwind at all or rest,
Right.
and it was just I understand, I understood, and of course the other character was his wife, so that's
Right.
one kind of goes with the other.
Yeah.
I do like the warlock that I created, the tiefling.
Warlocks can be a lot of fun, I will say. They certainly can be. It's just that magic is so complicated in Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
systems, which, for those of you in the audience, if you are playing a fighter and you have a sword in your hand and you want to know if you can do the thing, you look at your base attack bonus, you roll a d20, add that in, and if your sword has any kind of enhancements to it to give you a better attack roll, add that as well. If that number is higher than the armor class of the monster you're fighting, then congratulations, you did the thing. With magic, sometimes it gets really, really complicated with having to figure out your caster level and whether or not you're casting a spell at that level. Then sometimes you even have to make a spellcraft check inside of that, and it has to not just beat their armor class, but there's a spell failure chance that you have to figure out and roll for, and then whether or not you technically succeeded in hitting them with a spell, you still didn't because of the failure chance. And if you want to get really technical, there's whether or not you even have the materials on hand, which if you don't, then even if you prepared the spell, technically speaking, you didn't prepare the spell because you don't have the materials. So there's no way for you to prepare the spell. It's so complicated.
That's where metamagic feats like eschew materials come in
Yes.
handy. Or
Although,
things like an arcane or divine focus.
although admittedly, I have met more than a few people that say the eschew materials meta magic feat is cheating for that exact reason. That it makes it too easy. They say, which I think it just makes it less complicated.
It really does, and I mean it's not like that doesn't have a drawback in other ways.
Yeah. There is also I really don't know if it's that much of a deal with the older systems like the actual Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, but in Pathfinder particularly, there are touched attacks, there's ranged attacks. Magic usually ends up falling under the category of, and this is so frustrating, a ranged touch attack, which how you figure out what you can do to not get hit by it is how how how
To be fair, that is usually specifically spells with Ray in the name.
true. Sometimes projectile spells do that though, and there's non-magical projectiles that are a ranged touch attack, and there's spells. You must remember there are some spells that allow you to cast it as a ranged touch attack instead of its normal form, which is even more baffling.
Yeah, but like most of the ranged touch attack weapons are
Animus?
holding on to it because of the way it's designed.
You might want to re-say that because you cut off in the middle of it, and we lost some of what you were saying. Speaking of which, are you there, Balasar?
Yes, I am.
All right. So make your point again, Animus.
With some things, like, say, specifically the mentioned ranged touch attack weapons, it's a ranged touch attack because though you're throwing it and therefore it has range, you're still holding on to it because of the way the weapon is designed, such as the net.
That's true, but nets are also completely non-lethal and I find for the most part useless.
Yes.
Mm,
But
You
whips
could-
count as range touch attacks as well, I believe. I could be wrong about that.
yeah,
That's right, and if you capture someone with a whip, it's counted as a grapple, and it goes against the weapon, not the person, and it's D&D is complicated.
Sometimes.
yeah.
For those of you that are new, D&D is complicated. In case you didn't know already from the gigantic stacks of books and the 5 different kinds of dice and everything, it's a little bit complicated.
Candid whip.
Yep. Okay, so how about feats? Do you guys like feats? Do you maybe wish they were less complicated? Because I know 5th edition basically obliterated the feat list, which was getting more than a little bit bloated. If we're going to be
Yeah.
fair, it basically obliterated it down to a list of what was it, 40, 50, maybe,
Yeah.
and most of those are class
Something
specific,
like that.
and most of those are class specific too. I mean, they came
Yeah.
out with that little pamphlet of a few extras. But what do you guys think? Do you like feats? Do you not like them?
I like having feats because they add a dynamic that allows you to far more customize how the character plays.
Yeah, say if you got a warlock or a sorcerer or a wizard or something, and you want to be able to stay away while the melee is in play, you can use something like spell sniper to increase the range and be able to
Oh, spell sniper.
do damage.
Taking spells that already have a ridiculous range and making them frankly unfair.
Warlock, the Eldritch Spear class thing,
Which has a range of, what was it, 250 feet?
gives Eldritch Blast 300 feet, or
Yeah.
300
Yeah.
foot range. Combine that with Spell Sniper, and you can sit 600 yards back with your Warlock and snipe things with Eldritch Blast. Which does...
Things you technically can't even see, really.
Yeah. Because magic.
Because magic, yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, as far as cantrips go, Eldritch Blast is insignificant in the amount of damage it can do.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of like feats, but I do find that they can get in the way. Because I've played games where we were trying to keep track of all of our feats, and especially toward end game, combat became it became a slog because every time a person's turn came up, they would have to go to their list of feats, and this was with us using tablets and laptops and all that to keep a nice little concise explanation, but we would have to go through and be like, okay, now I'm going to attack him, but I'm going to do a charge attack that gets me to do this, this, and this. Roll for that. Okay, now for my second action, I'm going to do this thing where I get to do a double attack against him and that one. And then, because of this other feat, since that guy is within close enough range, I can then use a thrown weapon to throw him and get another attack on that one. And it just. It gets to be a little bit much. Which again, 5th edition is kind of fixed, at least for Dungeons and Dragons, because they cut it down so heavily. And honestly, Game of Thrones fixed it as well. The old system that we haven't had a chance to play with yet with this group, because so many of the feats that were in that weren't about getting extra attacks and getting all kinds of extra stuff in combat, because the majority of that system is designed to be the Game of Thrones itself, the going about parties and assassinations and political motions and movements and all of that intrigue and stuff, which, like I've said, I enjoy very much. I like it a lot. What about you, Belisar? What do you think about feats? Do you like them? Do you hate them? You want more of them?
I mean, they come in handy. I mean, if you could just narrow it down to a select few per class, then and then basically either
like a select few per class, and then maybe a few universal.
make them, some that are primary that are, good for whatever you're planning, and then have
Yeah.
a secondary or something else like that. Yeah,
Secondary, tertiary, all that good stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Features and abilities, because that's another thing that can bog down combat. Honestly, as well, is the features and abilities of being able to mark people and having the all kinds of other stuff about, well, this person came within so much range and all that. But at the same time, features and abilities gives you things like a paladin being able to lay on hands and give people health, and being able to sense that there's undead creatures nearby or fiends running around doing crazy crap. Which personally, I really like the features and abilities thing. I think it gives a flavor to each class. It gives them an individual feel that's unique from the others that are in the system, which can be done in other ways, but at the same time, you really don't feel like you're playing a fighter when you play a thief or what's the
Rogue.
word? Rogue. Yes, thank you, rogue. The rogue doesn't feel like a fighter. The fighter is based around having a favorite enemy and having a favored weapon and doing everything they can with that to just blow through the enemy lines. Playing a rogue is about sneaking around and being able to get past people and doing sneak attack damage when you stealth your way up to them without them noticing you're there. And just it's all about that. And playing a ranger is all about being able to track people down and figure out what somebody's going to do before they do it and all that. I like it a lot. What about you guys? What do you think?
hmm. There are a few other classes that are just totally overblown and so broken.
Oh, yes, very, very broken. Especially when you get into the system of prestige classes, which for those of you that don't know, a normal class usually goes up to 20. A prestige class is kind of an evolution or a combination of multiple classes that is designed to be used during the ending of an adventure or a campaign or after you've completed the thing, because it's you're not just a fighter, you're a champion. You're better than the other fighters in the world. You're one of the best that's ever been. You've become the best like no one ever was, you might say, and those get broken very quickly. But admittedly, some of the features of regular classes can be broken very easily.
Yeah, we did have at least one in our group that subconsciously chose to create broken characters left and right.
I don't know
They
what you're
ever
talking about.
so
He's still
mentioned
doing that.
they ever so mentioned Pixie Fairy Bard.
To be fair, that wasn't so much his fault as the GM. I mean, it was the kid's first time ever acting as GM, but it was his fault for letting him be a pixie bard.
And then to have a companion pet that could fight with magic spells and stuff.
Yeah, he let him have a fairy dragon, which admittedly is
Yeah.
kind of a weak creature, but despite being a weak creature, one of the spells that it had was sleep, which is really broken, which is intended to be used for it to be able to run away, like Abra having teleport in Pokemon, but because it was the companion creature to a fighting, player, it was casting sleep on enemies, and then its master was attacking those enemies, and it was casting sleep on enemies, and then the rest of the party was attacking enemies.
Was it
Uh,
the Pixie Fairy Bard had something to do with stun, and then you had
the fa-
the
the fairy
the
dragon that would cast sleep, yeah.
yeah, that was ridiculous. Had all those kobolds jammed through a doorway, unable to get the other enemy to come through. And again, it was not that character's direct fault. It was the fact that the gym was a little green.
Can you hear Animus right now? Because he just texted me saying that he can't hear me.
Yeah, you have cut out a few times to where
No,
you
I
say
mean,
something and then it drops off for like a couple seconds and then you come back like you hadn't stopped talking.
I'm gonna